Number 9, the Kawasaki H2 750 Triple. Let us talk about the Widowmaker. The guys who rode these and survived love to tell you it was pure skill. To be honest, a lot of it was luck and fast reflexes. Kawasaki built a motorcycle that killed people. Why? Because they bolted a locomotive engine into a frame built from tinfoil and wishful thinking. That double cradle steel tube chassis had the torsional rigidity of a wet noodle. Push it past reasonable cornering speeds and it started weaving. Not drifting, weaving. A harmonic tank slapper wobble that came out of nowhere. It swapped ends faster than you could react. Now, that engine was genuinely terrifying. 74 horsepower in 1972 was no joke. 0 to 60 happened before your brain caught up. I get it. I rode one. The power was absolutely real. But the engine was mounted so far back in the frame. The weight bias was already rearward before you even sat down. Hit the power band around 5,000 revolutions per minute, and the front wheel just lifted. First gear, second gear, third gear, whether you wanted it to or not. Then, when you tried to slow that thing down, you had a single front disc and a drum brake out back. They were barely adequate for a bike making 40 horsepower, let alone 74. Number 8, the BMW R1200GS and R1250GS. 60% of the people buying a GS are riding them to coffee shops. They call themselves adventure riders. They have the Touratech catalog memorized. They spent $4,000 on aluminum luggage. And the knobby tires they bolted on still have the factory mold release marks on the center tread. Look, the GS is genuinely one of the finest highway touring machines on the planet. Smooth power, comfortable ergonomics, a fuel range that embarrasses most bikes. I understand the appeal completely, but taking it off-road is a mechanical problem. The issue is the telelever front end. BMW designed that system to eliminate fork dive under braking. It does that very well on pavement, but it completely removes the feedback loop between your hands and the front tire. On a loose dirt surface, that feedback is the exact warning you need before the front washes out. You feel nothing. Then you are abruptly on the ground. Beyond that, those boxer cylinders hang out wide on both sides of the engine. Catch one on a rock in a low-speed drop, and you crack the valve cover. That is not a trailside repair. That is an expensive flatbed call. If you actually want to ride dirt, go buy a Yamaha Tenere 700. It weighs nearly 100 pounds less and actually lets you feel the front wheel. Before we get to number 7, let me know your take down in the comments. Hit subscribe and tell me which of these bikes you actually love or absolutely hate. Number 7. The Harley-Davidson Sportster 883 and 1200. The Sportster looks right. It sounds right. When you hear that classic potato idle, it is not manufactured nostalgia. There is a real reason that silhouette has been on magazine covers for 60 years. The history is real. Nobody is taking that away. But for decades, dealerships pushed this as a starter Harley. That is where it gets ugly. All that heavy iron sits high in the frame. The center of gravity is way up in the air. At slow speeds, that bike is clumsy. Maneuvering in parking lots is a chore. Under 15 miles per hour, it desperately wants to fall over. Beginners panic. Bikes go down on top of them. Then there is the rear suspension. You get about 2 inches of travel if you are lucky. Every pothole and railroad track goes straight up your spine with absolutely zero filtering. Do yourself a massive favor. Start on a Honda Rebel 500 instead. It is 100 pounds lighter. It will actually teach you how to ride safely, rather than just teaching you how to balance top-heavy iron. Number 6. The Kawasaki KLR 650. What is the cheapest motorcycle community on Earth? KLR owners. They will fix a cracked fairing with zip ties and act like they are engineering geniuses. Let me know in the comments if you are one of those guys. I know you are out there. Now, the bike is cheap to buy and cheap to run. It will drink gasoline that would make a lawnmower complain. That ruggedness deserves respect. But we need to talk about the doohickey problem. That is the nickname for the factory balancer chain tensioner lever. It was a welded piece of mild steel. Kawasaki used it from 1987 through multiple generations. It was undersized. It was improperly supported. It was prone to cracking, bending, or just snapping clean off. When that lever fails, the balancer chain goes slack. A loose chain can jump a sprocket, lock the engine, or send metal fragments directly into the oil pump. The aftermarket sold tens of thousands of upgraded replacement units. Why? Because the factory part was simply garbage. Kawasaki knew about this for over 2 decades and kept shipping the exact same weak part. And let us be honest about the rest of the bike. The front suspension dives like a submarine the second you touch the brakes. Speaking of brakes, squeezing the front lever feels like pressing a block of wood against a steel rotor. People buy these for $3,000, then spend $2,000 on aftermarket suspension, crash bars, and brake upgrades just to make it rideable. Meanwhile, guys on Suzuki DR650s are riding lighter bikes that actually stop, without a factory-installed time bomb sitting next to their oil pump. Number 5. The modern Triumph Bonneville. Triumph basically built a very expensive prop for a period film. Let me explain. The aesthetic of the modern Bonneville is perfect. If you wanted the best-looking motorcycle of the 1960s using modern manufacturing, this is it. Steve McQueen could have ridden it straight onto a film set. Nobody is arguing the looks. But starting around 2009, emissions regulations forced them to use fuel injection. So what did Triumph do? They built throttle bodies designed to look exactly like old carburetors. Fake carb bodies, shaped deliberately to fool your eye. Then, on the liquid-cooled versions, they cast cooling fins into the outside of the engine block. Liquid cooling renders those fins completely thermally useless. They do nothing mechanically. They are decorative metal, bolted permanently to a working machine. You are hauling around dead weight purely for nostalgia. The bike weighs over 500 pounds wet, making mediocre horsepower because half the engine bay is a costume. It is completely absurd when you think about it mechanically. You have a vintage-looking bike that still requires a dealership laptop to clear a check engine light. At that point, you are not really buying a motorcycle. You are buying an image. If you want genuine heritage without the costume department bolting fake parts to your engine, look at a Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. It gives you an honest air and oil-cooled parallel twin for a fraction of the price. Number 4. The Yamaha V-Max. An engine desperately looking for a motorcycle. That is the original Generation 1 V-Max. The V-Boost system on that engine was an entertaining engineering gimmick. Below 6,000 revolutions per minute, it ran on 2 carburetors per cylinder bank. Hit that threshold, and secondary butterflies opened up. All 4 barrels fed the engine simultaneously. The surge was completely absurd. It was hilarious every single time. But then you had to turn. The steering geometry was terrible. The bike was never expected to change direction quickly, and it showed. The front end pushed wide. Steering it felt like pushing a loaded shopping cart through wet concrete. Plus, the tiny front brake setup was a joke. It was not remotely adequate for stopping a 650-pound muscle bike in a hurry. And we have to talk about the frame. The chassis flex under hard acceleration was terrifying. When you grabbed a handful of throttle, the tubular steel frame literally twisted before the rear wheels started pushing you forward. Combine that with the shaft drive jacking effect, where the rear suspension violently tops out under power, and the bike actively tried to buck you off. The frame was designed around how the engine looked, not how the bike would actually behave at speed. That engine was a masterpiece. It deserved a real motorcycle chassis wrapped around it. It got a styling exercise, with wheels bolted on instead. Number 3. The Ducati 916 and 996. As a piece of industrial sculpture, the 916 is about as close to perfect as a motorcycle can get. Massimo Tamburini designed something genuinely beautiful. The proportions are perfect. The trellis frame, the single-sided swing arm, the undertail exhaust. Ducati knew exactly what they had, and they charged for it accordingly. But as a street bike, it is suffering dressed up as art. Let us start with the riding position. It was designed for a tiny Italian racer. The ergonomics fold normal-sized guys into a pretzel. Your wrists take the entire weight of your upper body at street speeds. Then there is the heat. Routing those exhaust pipes directly under the seat is a nightmare. In stop-and-go traffic, sustained heat rises up and cooks you from underneath. Your riding gear does not save you. And of course, we have to mention the dry clutch. At a stoplight, it sounds like a coffee can full of broken bolts rattling around. Owners pretend it is a racing feature. Everyone else just thinks your bike is broken. Then there is the desmodromic valve system. It uses mechanical rockers instead of springs to close the valves. That is clever on a racetrack. On the street, those services cost between $1,000 and $2,000 every 6,000 miles. And the chrome on those rockers is known to flake off entirely. You could buy a Suzuki GSX-R 750 from the exact same era. You would go just as fast, and you would never have to take out a second mortgage to check your valves. Number 2, the Suzuki Hayabusa. I want to know how many of you have ever been passed by a stretched Hayabusa in the twisties. My guess is 0. The aerodynamic engineering on a stock Hayabusa is legitimate, serious work. Suzuki built that bodywork in a wind tunnel with a specific top speed target. They hit it convincingly. The 1,340 cubic centimeter engine is a monument to durability. It will run 200,000 miles on basic maintenance without complaint. But what is not legitimate is the owner who stretches the swing arm 18 inches. He bolts on a massive rear tire that belongs on a bagger and tells you he built a performance machine. No, he did not. Extending that swing arm ruins the steering geometry completely. The front wheel barely feels connected to the bike. It steers like a city bus. It takes an enormous amount of pavement just to change lanes comfortably. And geometrically, that stretch destroys your rear suspension. By moving the rear axle that far back, you drastically alter the leverage ratio on the rear shock. The spring cannot support the weight correctly anymore. The rear end just bottoms out over every bump like a rigid strut. Add a lowering kit to the mix, and your oil pan is one speed bump away from shattering. Take that stretched out mess to a canyon road. Watch a kid on a stock CBR 600 disappear away from you in 3 corners. The drag strip is the only situation where any of that makes sense, and most of these guys never see a drag strip. They see parking lots and cruise nights. Number 1, the Honda Grom. Let us end with the TikTok generation's favorite toy, the Honda Grom. As a pit bike or a track day toy, it earns every penny. The 125 cubic centimeters engine is bulletproof Honda engineering. It is nearly indestructible. It will outlast most of its owners. But out on public streets, mixing in with actual traffic, it is a bad idea. Riders expect a 12-inch wheel to behave like a full-size motorcycle wheel. It physically cannot. A smaller diameter wheel deflects violently off road imperfections. It has less rolling diameter to smooth over the obstacle. At 30 miles per hour on clean pavement, it is fine. But hit a standard American pothole at 50 miles per hour, that 12-inch front wheel gets knocked sideways. A 17-inch wheel absorbs that impact and keeps going. Our roads are rough. A 12-inch wheel is simply not built to handle them at speed. If you want a hooligan street bike, get a DRZ 400 Supermoto instead. Real wheels, real suspension, and it will not get swallowed whole by a pothole. That's it for today. If you loved this video, do make sure to subscribe so you do not miss the next upload.